Let's be honest for a moment. If you have less than $100,000 saved right now, there's a quiet feeling you can't fully ignore. You may be getting by, paying bills, handling responsibilities, but underneath it all, there's a sense that things are not as secure as they should be. It's not panic. It's not even fear in the obvious sense. It's something quieter, a realization that time has been moving forward, but your financial position hasn't moved with it the way you expected. And that thought tends to return when everything else gets quiet. You've worked, you've stayed consistent, you've tried to be responsible with your decisions. So it's natural to wonder, how did things end up here? Not in a bad place, but not in a strong one either. Somewhere in between. And that in between is where most people live. Stable enough to function, but not secure enough to feel in control. It's a place that feels acceptable on the surface, but uncomfortable the moment you think about the future. Because the truth is, this isn't just about the number, it's about what the number represents. It reflects years of decisions, habits, and beliefs about money that were formed long before you ever started earning it. You were taught to work hard, save what you can, and avoid unnecessary risks. And while that creates discipline, it doesn't always create growth. It keeps you steady, but it doesn't always move you forward. That's the part most people never question. They assume effort alone is enough, that if they keep going, things will eventually improve. But over time, they begin to see that something is missing. That effort without direction can only take you so far, because money doesn't respond to effort alone. It responds to how you think about it, how you position yourself around it, and how you make decisions that allow it to grow beyond your time. And if no one ever showed you that, it's easy to spend years doing the right things without getting the results you expected. That realization can feel uncomfortable. It forces you to look at things differently, to question habits that once felt safe, to admit that what you've been doing may not lead where you want it to go. And that's exactly why most people avoid it. They continue with what feels familiar. They delay the deeper questions. They tell themselves they'll figure it out later. And without realizing it, they stay on the same path, hoping for a different outcome. But here's where everything can change. Because once you become aware of your position honestly, without avoiding it, you gain something powerful: clarity. And clarity gives you the ability to make different decisions moving forward. You don't need to panic. You don't need to rush. But you do need to wake up to what's real. To understand where you are, what's missing, and what needs to change if you want a different result. Because time will continue either way. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, the difference will not come from how hard you worked. It will come from whether you adjusted your thinking, whether you shifted your approach, whether you chose to act differently. Most people won't. They'll hear this, feel something for a moment, and then return to what's comfortable. They'll delay change because it feels easier. And over time, that delay becomes permanent. But a few will take this differently. A few will recognize that this is not just information, it's a turning point, a moment to stop, reassess, and take control of something that has been left on autopilot for too long. Because where you are right now is not the problem. It's the signal. A signal that something needs to change, not just in what you do, but in how you think, in how you approach money, decisions, and the direction you're moving in. What you're about to hear is not meant to comfort you. It's meant to sharpen your awareness, to show you what has been overlooked and what becomes possible once you begin to see it clearly. And if you stay with it, something will begin to shift. Not overnight, not dramatically, but enough to change your direction. Because this moment is not the end of your financial story. It's the point where you finally decide to take control of it. There is a condition in which many men find themselves, not through sudden misfortune, but through gradual progression. It is not a condition of failure, nor one of immediate danger. It is something far more subtle. It is the state of being sufficiently stable to continue, yet insufficiently advanced to feel secure. And because it does not produce urgency, it often goes unexamined. A man in this position fulfills his obligations. He works, he pays his expenses, and he maintains his responsibilities. To those observing from the outside, there appears to be no cause for concern. He is steady, reliable, and consistent. Yet beneath this outward appearance lies a quiet awareness that something is not moving forward as it should. This awareness does not present itself as alarm. It is not accompanied by panic or visible distress. It is quieter than that. It appears in moments of reflection, when activity ceases and the mind is left to consider its position. In those moments, a question arises not forcefully, but persistently, whether the current path will lead to greater strength or simply maintain the present condition. Many choose not to pursue this question. They return to their routine, finding comfort in the familiarity of their actions. For routine provides a sense of control, even when it does not produce advancement. It allows the individual to feel engaged, to believe that effort is being applied, and to assume that results will follow in time. Yet effort, when applied without direction, does not necessarily produce progress. It produces movement, but not always advancement. A man may remain active for many years and find that his position has changed little. This is not due to lack of effort, but to lack of alignment between his actions and the result he seeks. There is a distinction that must be made between stability and progress. Stability preserves what is already in place. It prevents decline and maintains order. Progress, however, expands beyond what exists. It increases, strengthens, and builds. Many mistake the former for the latter, believing that because they are not declining, they must be advancing. This misunderstanding is reinforced over time. Each year that passes without disruption confirms the belief that all is well. The absence of difficulty is taken as evidence of success, yet the absence of difficulty is not the same as the presence of growth. It is possible to remain unchanged while appearing secure. The condition of financial drift develops in this manner. It is not the result of a single decision, but of repeated patterns. Small choices, made without deliberate intention, accumulate over time. They do not produce immediate consequence, and therefore they are rarely examined. Yet their combined effect determines the outcome. A man may choose comfort over examination, convenience over adjustment, and familiarity over change. Each of these choices appears reasonable in isolation. There is no single moment at which he can point and say that his position was determined. It is shaped gradually through repetition, There are many examples of individuals who remained in such a condition for extended periods. They were not without ability, nor were they lacking in effort. They simply continued along a path that did not lead to expansion. It was only when they paused to examine their position that they recognized the need for change. At that moment, a realization occurs. The individual sees that his current position is not the result of external forces alone, but of internal patterns. He begins to understand that what he has accepted as normal may not be sufficient for the future he desires. This realization, though uncomfortable, is necessary. Others may not perceive this condition. They see only the outward appearance, the consistency, the reliability, the absence of difficulty. They may even regard the individual as responsible and disciplined. Yet responsibility without direction produces maintenance, not advancement. The individual must therefore look beyond appearance. He must consider not only whether he is stable, but whether he is progressing. He must ask whether his actions are producing growth or merely sustaining what already exists. This question, when answered honestly, reveals the truth of his position. There is an affirmation which may be applied at this stage. I do not confuse stability with progress. I demand advancement in all that I do. This statement serves as a reminder that preservation is not the same as expansion. It directs the mind toward growth rather than maintenance. As this understanding develops, the individual begins to see his situation more clearly. He recognizes that his position is not fixed, but influenced by his thinking and his actions. He sees that what he has accepted as sufficient may in fact be limiting. There is often resistance at this point. The mind prefers comfort, even when that comfort restricts progress. It suggests that change is unnecessary, that the current condition is adequate, and that effort alone will eventually produce the desired result. Yet these suggestions must be examined. The individual must consider whether time, without adjustment, has produced the results he seeks. If not, then continuation of the same pattern will produce the same outcome. This realization requires courage, for it challenges what has been accepted for years. As he begins to question his patterns, a shift occurs. He becomes more aware of his actions, more deliberate in his choices, and more attentive to their effects. He no longer acts solely out of habit, but with consideration of direction. This awareness marks the beginning of change. Others may begin to notice this shift. They observe a difference in the individual's attention, a greater sense of purpose, and a willingness to examine what was previously accepted. These changes, though subtle, indicate a movement away from drift and toward direction. It must be understood that this process does not produce immediate transformation. It begins with recognition, followed by examination, and then by adjustment. Each stage builds upon the last, gradually altering the individual's course. The man who continues in this process finds that his thinking becomes more focused. He is no longer content with maintaining his position. He seeks to improve it. He begins to consider not only what he is doing, but why he is doing it and where it will lead. This consideration produces intention. Actions are no longer taken without purpose, but directed toward a specific outcome. The individual moves from passive continuation to active creation. He begins to shape his position rather than simply sustain it. Thus, the illusion of stability is revealed for what it is, a condition that preserves but does not expand. Once this illusion is recognized, the individual is no longer satisfied with remaining where he is. He seeks movement, growth, and advancement. And so, it may be said that the first step in changing one's financial position is not action, but awareness. It is the recognition that effort alone is not sufficient, and that direction must be applied. From this recognition comes examination, and from examination, change. The individual, having seen his position clearly, stands at a point of decision. He may continue as before, or he may alter his course. The choice, once recognized, cannot be ignored, and it is in this moment that drift ends and direction begins. Before a man ever earns his first sum of money, before he makes his first decision regarding its use, there are already ideas forming within his mind concerning what money is, how it is to be handled, and what place it occupies in his life. These ideas are not always deliberate. They are absorbed gradually through observation, instruction, and repeated suggestion. A child observes the conduct of those around him. He hears conversations concerning money, whether it is scarce or sufficient, whether it is to be protected or pursued, whether it is associated with worry or with opportunity. These impressions, though not fully understood at the time, begin to form a foundation. Over time, this foundation becomes a system of belief. It operates quietly, guiding decisions without requiring conscious thought. When the individual begins to earn, he does not act without influence. He acts according to what he has come to accept as correct, often without questioning its origin. Many are taught discipline, and this is valuable. They are instructed to work steadily, to avoid unnecessary loss, and to preserve what they earn. These principles create order, yet they do not necessarily produce expansion. They teach maintenance, but not multiplication. There is a distinction between protecting money and directing it. Protection preserves what exists. Direction causes it to increase. The man who has been taught only to preserve will often hesitate to direct, for he has learned to avoid loss rather than to pursue gain. His actions, though careful, remain limited. This limitation is seldom recognized. The individual believes he is acting wisely, for he follows what he has been taught. He avoids risk, maintains stability, and continues his efforts. Yet, despite these actions, his position changes little. The reason lies not in his effort, but in the pattern guiding it. There are many who, after years of consistent work, find themselves asking how their position has remained nearly the same. They have done what was expected. They have followed the instruction given. Yet the result has not produced the strength they anticipated. This question, when examined, reveals the influence of early conditioning. Consider the individual who was taught to regard money as something that must be guarded carefully, to be used sparingly, and to be protected from loss. While this instruction prevents recklessness, it may also prevent expansion. The individual becomes cautious, not only in avoiding loss, but in pursuing opportunity. In contrast, there are those who were exposed to a different view. They saw money as something to be directed, to be placed where it might produce more of itself. They learned that careful judgment, combined with deliberate action, could create increase. Their approach differs, not because of greater effort, but because of different belief. It must be understood that neither condition is fixed. Belief, though powerful, is not permanent. It may be examined, adjusted, and replaced. Yet this requires awareness. The individual must recognize that what he has accepted may not be complete. There are examples of men who began with limited understanding of money, who followed patterns that produced little advancement, and who later altered their course by changing their thinking. They did not increase their effort alone, they changed the manner in which they approached their decisions. Others, observing such individuals, often describe them as bold or fortunate. Yet their actions are not reckless, they are deliberate. They have examined what they were taught, retained what is useful, and replaced what limits them. Through this, they have altered their direction. The individual who seeks to do the same must begin by questioning his own beliefs. He must ask where they originated, whether they have produced the results he desires, and whether they are aligned with his present aim. This examination is not simple, for belief often feels like truth. There is an affirmation which may assist in this process. I examine and reshape every belief that governs my relation to money. This statement directs attention inward. It acknowledges that change begins not with action alone, but with understanding. As this examination continues, the individual may begin to notice patterns. He may see that he avoids certain opportunities without clear reason, that he hesitates where action may be required, or that he favors preservation even when expansion is possible. These patterns are not accidental, they are the expression of belief. Once recognized, they may be altered. The individual may choose to act differently, to consider alternatives, and to direct his efforts in a new manner. At first, this may feel uncertain, for it departs from what is familiar. Yet through repetition, the new pattern becomes established. Others may observe this change and respond to it. They see a man who is no longer confined by habit, who considers more than he once did, and who acts with greater intention. His decisions appear more deliberate, his direction more defined. This perception alters the opportunities that come to him. There is also an increase in awareness. The individual becomes more attentive to his financial conduct. He considers not only what he earns, but how he uses it. He begins to see money not as something that simply passes through his hands, but as something that may be directed with purpose. This awareness produces control. The individual is no longer governed by unconscious habit, but guided by deliberate thought. Each decision becomes an opportunity to reinforce his new understanding. Over time, these decisions accumulate, producing measurable change. It must be emphasized that this process requires repetition. Beliefs formed over many years do not dissolve at once. They must be replaced through consistent application. Each act of deliberate thinking strengthens the new pattern, while each return to habit weakens it. As the new pattern develops, the individual experiences a shift in confidence. He no longer relies solely upon what he has been taught. He trusts his ability to examine, to decide, and to act. This confidence is not based upon assumption, but upon understanding. Others begin to recognize this confidence. They see a man who is no longer uncertain, who approaches decisions with thought, and who acts with purpose. This perception enhances his position, attracting further opportunity. Thus, It may be said that the condition in which many find themselves is not merely the result of effort, but of belief. The patterns established early continue unless they are examined. When examined, they may be changed. When changed, they alter the course of one's financial life. The man who understands this does not remain bound to what he has inherited. He reshapes it. He retains what is useful, discards what is limiting, and builds upon what remains. Through this, he creates a new foundation, one that supports not only stability, but expansion. And so, the hidden influence of early conditioning is brought into the light. What was once unseen becomes clear. What was once accepted becomes questioned, and from this questioning arises the possibility of change. The individual, having recognized the source of his pattern, stands now prepared to alter it. Not through effort alone, but through understanding applied with intention. There is a misunderstanding so common that it is rarely questioned, and yet it determines the financial position of the majority. It is the belief that earning money and building financial strength are one and the same. A man works, receives compensation, and assumes that continued effort will naturally lead to increased security. Yet experience often proves otherwise. A man may labor for many years, increasing his effort, improving his skill, and maintaining consistency, yet find that his financial position has changed very little. He may earn more than before, yet retain no greater strength. This condition is not caused by lack of effort, but by lack of direction. Earning is the result of labor. It is the exchange of time, skill, or service for compensation. It is necessary, for without it, there is no beginning. Yet earning alone does not create expansion. It provides the means, but not the outcome. The outcome depends upon what is done after the earning takes place. Directing, on the other hand, is the act of deciding where money will go, how it will be used, and whether it will return with increase. It is the application of thought to the movement of money. It determines whether money is consumed, preserved, or multiplied. Many men earn, but do not direct. Their money flows through their hands according to habit, obligation, and immediate need. It is spent without clear intention, saved without defined purpose, and used without plan. In such a condition, money does not accumulate, it circulates. There is no fault in this at first, for many are never taught otherwise. They are instructed to work, to be responsible, and to manage their obligations. Yet, they are seldom shown how to guide money beyond these functions. As a result, they remain in a cycle, earning, spending, and repeating. This cycle produces stability, but not strength. It allows the individual to continue, but not to advance. The position remains unchanged, not because effort is lacking, but because direction is absent. The man is active, yet not progressing. Consider the individual who receives an increase in income. For a time, his condition appears improved. He has greater means, greater flexibility, and greater comfort. Yet if his pattern of direction remains the same, the increase does not produce lasting change. His expenditures rise, his habits continue, and his position returns to its previous state. In contrast, there are those who, even with modest income, alter their direction. They decide, with intention, that a portion of what they receive will not be consumed, but directed. They assign purpose to their money. They place it where it may produce return rather than disappear through use. This distinction, though simple, is powerful. It separates those who remain in the cycle from those who move beyond it. The difference is not in how much they earn, but in how they think about what they earn. There are many examples of individuals who began with limited means, yet achieved financial strength through direction. They did not wait for greater income before acting. They used what they had, applying it with intention, and through repetition, they built upon it. Others, observing such individuals, often believed that they possessed unusual advantage. Yet their advantage was not in resources, but in understanding. They recognized that money must be guided, not merely received. They made decisions where others continued in habit. There is an affirmation which may be applied to strengthen this understanding. I do not work for money alone. I direct money to work beyond my effort. This statement shifts the focus from labor to control. It emphasizes that earning is only the beginning, not the end. As this idea is accepted, the individual begins to observe his own conduct more closely. He considers not only what he earns, but how it moves. He asks whether each portion serves a purpose, whether it contributes to his future, and whether it is aligned with his aim. This examination produces awareness. The individual begins to see patterns that were previously unnoticed. He recognizes where money is lost without return, where it is held without direction, and where it may be placed with greater effect. There may be resistance at this stage. The habits of consumption are strong, and the comfort of familiarity is difficult to alter. The individual may feel uncertain in directing his money differently, for it requires decision where there was once routine. Yet this uncertainty is temporary. Through repeated action, the new pattern begins to form. The individual becomes more deliberate in his choices, more thoughtful in his use of money, and more attentive to its movement. Each decision reinforces the next, creating a system where there was once none. Others begin to observe this change. They see a man who is no longer passive in his financial conduct. He appears more controlled, more intentional, and more aware. His actions suggest that he is not merely earning, but building. This perception alters the opportunities available to him. Those who recognize direction respond differently than those who observe habit. They see potential, reliability, and purpose. From this perception, new possibilities emerge. There is also a shift in confidence. The individual no longer feels that his position is determined solely by his income. He understands that his decisions play a greater role. This understanding reduces dependence upon circumstance and increases control over outcome. It must be emphasized that directing money does not require immediate perfection. It requires intention and consistency. The individual must begin where he is, using what he has and applying it with purpose. Through repetition, his skill improves and his results increase. There is a gradual accumulation that occurs. Each act of direction contributes to a larger result. The individual may not see this at once, but over time, the difference becomes clear. What once passed through his hands now begins to remain, to grow, and to strengthen his position. Others may begin to regard this as discipline, yet it is more than that. It is understanding applied. It is the recognition that money responds not to effort alone, but to thought. It is guided by decision, shaped by habit, and multiplied through direction. Thus, the difference between earning and directing becomes evident. One provides the means, the other produces the result. Without earning, there is nothing to direct. Without directing, there is nothing to build. The man who understands this does not cease to earn, he continues, but with new awareness. Each sum received is no longer viewed as an end, but as an opportunity. It is something to be used, not merely spent. And so, the cycle is broken. The individual moves beyond repetition and begins to create. He shifts from labor alone to direction, from activity to advancement, from maintenance to growth. It is at this point that true financial movement begins, not when a man earns more, but when he learns to direct what he earns with intention. There is no lasting change in a man's financial condition until there is first a change in the manner in which he thinks. Action may begin the process, but thought determines its direction. If thought remains unchanged, action will eventually return to its former pattern, and the results will follow accordingly. Many men make occasional efforts to improve their position. They adjust their behavior for a time, exercise restraint, or attempt to increase their means. Yet these efforts are often temporary, for they are not supported by a corresponding change in thought. The underlying pattern remains, and in time, it reasserts itself. Financial results are not created by isolated decisions, but by repeated ones. Each choice, though small in itself, contributes to a larger pattern. These patterns, formed over time, determine the outcome. Therefore, the individual who seeks to change his position must examine not only what he does, but how he decides. There are decisions made with awareness, and there are those made without it. The latter are governed by habit. They occur without deliberate thought, influenced by established patterns. A man spends, saves, or refrains without considering the long-term effect. His actions are automatic, and their consequences accumulate unnoticed. The man who seeks advancement must interrupt this automatic process. He must bring his decisions into conscious awareness. He must ask, before each financial action, what purpose it serves, whether it contributes to his aim, and what effect it will produce over time. This questioning transforms habit into intention. It is not necessary that each decision be complex. What is required is that it be deliberate. A simple act, when guided by purpose, carries greater effect than many acts performed without thought. The individual must therefore learn to pause, to consider, and then to act. There is a principle that governs this process. Money responds to clarity. When decisions are made with uncertainty, the results are uncertain. When they are made with purpose, the results align accordingly. Clarity organizes action, reduces waste, and directs movement toward a definite end. Examples may be found in those who have transformed their condition not through sudden change, but through consistent application of deliberate thinking. They did not rely upon occasional effort.